infused with the scent of potpourri, the films we commit to memory. Crossing the felt ropes, watching from home on my TV, looking at all my eyes can see. They tell me I view obsessively.
Hello and welcome to The Obsessive Viewer. We're a movie and TV podcast that covers a specific topic, be it genre, trope, movie, or show, each episode. You can find more of our work at obsessiveviewer.com and more of our podcasts at obsessiveviewer.com/podcasts. You can also like us on social media at facebook.com/theobsessiveviewer and on Twitter at obsessiveviewer. You can also, oh, here we go. I completely forgot to bring up my notes. And while every episode will always be free, if you'd like to support what we do here, you can become a patron at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer for tons and tons of bonus audio content, including TV and book reviews, immediate reaction movie reviews, Patreon potpourri episodes, movie commentary tracks, and B-roll episodes that we record before each episode that we record for the main feed. Again, that's at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. I'm currently doing episode reaction recordings of The Last of Us, which I need to finish, and I have a bunch of stuff on there. Currently, I'm doing a very comprehensive read-along review series for The Expanse series by James S.A. Corey. So that is each month, 6 episodes dissecting each book in The Expanse, 100 pages at a time. It's a blast. I'm having a lot of fun doing that. But yeah, anyway, I'm your host, one of your hosts, Matt Hurt, and you can find me on social media, including Letterboxd at Obsessive Viewer. And today on the show, we're going to be doing an extended potpourri episode, which is basically an episode where we just go back and forth about different movies and shows that we've watched, share our thoughts on it, and kind of just have a nice little conversation about it. And joining me today to do that is Mr. Tiny, who can be found on Letterboxd at ObsessiveTiny and everywhere else as ObsessiveTiny and everything. Yeah, how's it going, Tiny?
Hey, pretty good, man. How you doing?
Nice, doing well. We had a very extended chat for the Patreon supporters. How'd you feel about that episode?
Really good. We haven't. That's like one of the longer ones we've done in a while, I think. Yeah,
it clocked in at around 50 minutes. It's pretty crazy. Yeah. That was a good one. And it's fitting too, because we haven't had an episode in a while, so I kind of feel like that's a good way to break back into it.
Right.
Yeah. And I will say, as a teaser for you guys, by the way, the B-roll episodes, those go out to all of the Patreon supporters. Patreon has different tiers that we have on there. So if you want that, you can pledge either $1 or up to $10, but you'll get access to that and early access to content. But also, if you want additional content, $2 is kind of the sweet spot. You get a lot of TV and book reviews, movie reactions on that one, I think, a bunch of stuff. And then $5 gets you commentary tracks in addition to everything else below that, and movie reviews and stuff like that. But anyway, I will say, as a teaser for that Patreon B-roll episode, there was something that I told Tiny. I shared an anecdote from our junior high days, 1999 to 2000, in which I shared something that I've never shared before, and it shocked Tiny to the point that he was almost speechless. Like, the look on your face was amazing. It was hilarious.
Truly. I mean, it's almost like the pinnacle of awkward Matt, who is like his own character.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, sadly. But sadly, that wasn't the pinnacle, Tiny. I have plenty of stories.
We'll let the listeners be the judge of that.
Yes. So again, that's at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. There's just a lot of fun, goofy stuff on there. And some good, criticism, like film criticism, and just more of the stuff that we do here that we really love doing, that we've almost been doing for 10 years. Now we have like a couple of months before we hit the 10-year mark, Tiny. How do you feel about that?
Jeez, that's crazy to think about.
Yeah.
I can't even process that at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Same here.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. It's wild. But yeah, so anyway, today we're going to be doing an extended potpourri. So if this happens to be your first time listening, or if you haven't listened in a while, ordinarily the episodes kind of take the structure of, at least more recently in the last couple of years, it's taken the structure of us reviewing a new release movie paired with a new release that's more available on streaming. So usually we'll try to do like a theatrical release movie as the main one, and then a streaming service movie that's easily accessible as the kind of, the secondary review. But sometimes, occasionally, when we have more time, we do a potpourri section where we just go round robin and share something briefly that we've watched or we're looking forward to. 10 years ago, it was, christened as the ongoing segment for the podcast. It's whatever we want as long as it smells good. It's the potpourri section. So occasionally we like to do a full run episode that's just extended potpourri. So we don't have a focal review. We're just going to share some anecdotes and reviews of movies and shows we've watched. Tiny, did I adequately give the audience the rundown of what we're doing?
Yeah, I think you're good.
Good. So before we do that, is there any news or anything? I feel like there was something the Flash trailer came out today, but I don't know if you saw it or not.
I haven't watched it, no.
Yeah. How interested are you in that movie, and how much are you aware of it in terms of like your expectations for it and what is in it? Because I don't know if you've seen the first trailer or not. This is the final trailer that came out.
Right. I have little to no expectations.
Okay.
It's not that I'm not interested in it. It's just that DC tends to treat all of their stuff like an afterthought. So that's kind of how I'm approaching it too. Like when it comes out, I'm going to be like, oh yeah, there's a new Flash movie. And like, or like, oh yeah, there's a new Superman movie or a new Batman movie. Like I just take it as it comes. Basically, I don't seek out information about it. I don't anticipate any of it. I just let it come out and then I'll watch it. And sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not, sometimes it's okay. Sometimes it gets completely redone and released on HBO Max in 4 parts.
Yeah,
or in however the hell they did the day. I don't even remember
the Snyder cut.
The Snyder cut was 6 hours long or whatever.
Yeah. I will say I enjoyed the Snyder cut, but yeah,
me too.
Yeah, but I agree with you. Yeah.
So I just kind of take it as it comes, and like I'm sure it's going to be something. Like I've seen some of the like snippets of the trailer, and I'm like, oh shit, okay, like this is cool. But like, and then there's the whole controversy of
Ezra Miller
being fucking nuts and doing crazy shit, and then like. I'm a little surprised it's coming out because he's so tainted. I don't know.
It's really interesting too because it's being positioned as a big like crossover thing because I don't like spoilers for the trailer and everything, and for everything about it basically. But Michael Keaton is reprising his role as Bruce Wayne.
Right.
And the whole big selling point is that it's kind of that multiverse sort of thing where like I'm very interested in that, but it's marred by both Ezra Miller's just complete insanity. Oh, and I just realized that we had something else that we should talk about in the entertainment world in terms of comic book movies and people that are in hot water. But with Ezra Miller and everything, like that's all something there too. That's all something that mars the experience as well. But also the fact that DC just has not known what they're doing. Like in terms of like Warner Brothers doesn't know what they're doing with the DC properties. So now there's all of this talk about how now James Gunn and his writing partner, I don't remember who it is, they are just doing everything themselves. Like they are finally now, like 10 years into into the whole shared universe thing. They're starting clean. They're doing a whole new thing. And that just means that like Black Adam, which was pretty much garbage and dead on arrival anyway, and Shazam too, like they're kind of meaningless. Like it just doesn't matter. None of it matters and everything. And then you have The Flash, which is going to be this big tentpole thing, and it's about like worlds colliding as the tagline and everything. And that's all well and good, but it's also like, at the end of the day, you have a problematic star at the center of it, and you have a studio that is starting from scratch anyway. Like, I don't know how to get too excited about it. Having said that, the new trailer that dropped today looks pretty fun, and it looks pretty enjoyable, but we'll see how it goes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of the formula with DC. It's just like wait and see. It could be good.
Yep.
Could be crap. We could get another Black Adam. I don't know.
I will say though, and even though this isn't connected to the DC EU or anything, but I'm still a staunch defender of the Batman from last year. Me too. I thought that was fantastic. So yeah,
me too.
But the other piece of news that came out that we haven't talked about on the podcast because it's been like a month since I posted an episode. Jonathan Majors, Tiny. I've kind of passingly followed what's going on with him. Okay, so let me give you the rundown of this. So Jonathan Majors is currently a hot commodity in Hollywood. He was in he's Kang the Conqueror in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He was introduced proper in that role in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, just like a couple of months ago. Previously, he appeared in Loki on Disney Plus, but also like he's riding the high of being in Creed 3, Devotion, and in a bunch of other stuff. Like he's having like a moment. But then he was arrested. He was taken into custody. I'm not reading off of this or anything. This is just stuff that I've gathered. But he was taken into custody sometime in mid-March, I think, after an altercation with his girlfriend, in which there was reports that he potentially strangled her a little bit. And it's been a weird evolution of all of this. Like everything that's happened around that has been just really weird to me. Like his team, like his at the time, his like, I don't know if it was his publicist or his lawyer, but they said, I think it was, I don't know, his team or whatever issued a statement saying like, hey, we are like, we're confident that this is all going to be cleared up. It's provable that he is not only not at fault for this, but he was in fact the victim of this altercation. We can't wait to clear this up and everything. So it's like, okay, those are some pretty big words for this. And then here's the thing though. Are you aware of the text messages, Tiny?
Yeah, I saw him, and wasn't his girlfriend basically like apologizing to him and saying like it's her fault or she was misquoted, or it sort of seems like she's, I don't know, it's pure speculation, but it's almost like she's how do I want to say it? Like she's sort of being manipulated by him.
Yes.
Like he has her convinced that, like, I don't know. Like I guess it's maybe I'm hesitant to say it because I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It seems fishy. It seems like she's only backtracking because he has this hold on her and has her brainwashed. Basically, it sort of seems like it's just like her explanations are like the text messages are like only coming about because he has her like brainwashed and manipulated. But
yeah, like
that's speculation, obviously. Like I don't know, but that's just kind of how it reads.
Yeah, it does not paint him in a good light, and it is baffling to me how, like, apparently these text messages were released by his attorney, and I think that I read that it was released by his I think his attorneys are a husband and wife team, and I think the husband released them to TMZ. But basically, I'm not going to read them and everything. I'll put a link in the show notes if I remember. But basically, it makes it sound like, hey, I'm so sorry that they arrested you. They shouldn't have. I explained to them that it was all my fault for grabbing your phone, and like I'm so sorry that's happened. Like, it's very, like you said, it's kind of playing out from a very, at best case scenario, an extremely toxic kind of relationship dynamic. And it's just baffling to me that they would think like, oh, this clears his name. He's fine. It's like,
right.
It doesn't.
The content of the text messages like appears to be like exculpatory, like clearing him in a way, but the tone of it totally does not read that way.
Not
like
at all.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like this could end up actually hurting more than it helps.
Yeah. And it has, because after that, oh wow, I just saw like a page 6 headline that says Jonathan Majors' Hollywood friends turn cold, keep their distance. Let's see, situation. Anyway, there was like reports that more people have come forward, and there's like the DA is like building a case, I guess, or something. But kind of a big, more alleged abuse victims cooperate with the DA's office. So I don't know what's all to come from that. But the big thing was that his publicists and managers, I think, dropped him. April 17th. Jonathan Majors and Manager Entertainment 360 part ways, which that is like a death knell. Like that's, I don't know. Like when, that's not good for him. So so that's all kind of interesting, and it's curious to see how that will affect the MCU, and hopefully the truth comes out, and hopefully justice, however it needs to be served. I don't know. It's he's a good actor, but that's not really what this is about. Right. Yep. Yeah. I'm a huge fan of his work and everything, but but I'm not like if he gets replaced as Kang, I don't care. If it's because of like, if it comes to light that this is like truly his behavior, then fuck him. I don't care. Like, he's not like, I'm fine with him being, cut out of the entertainment industry, because that's not cool.
Right. Right.
But anyway, that's the bummer of the bummer news of the episode. Oh, I do have another anecdote that I kind of want to share that is related to this. Sort of related to this. I posted on Facebook about reading Matthew Perry's memoir.
I saw that.
It's weird, man. Like, did you read the post?
I remember. Okay. Yeah, I read what you said.
Yeah, it's weird because, like, as someone who was like, I was a big fan of Friends. Like, that was probably my favorite sitcom. Like, as a teenager, I watched it all the time. I loved it. It doesn't hold up now with the era of prestige television and everything. Like, it's hard to kind of go back and watch like dated stuff like that. But it's fine. But anyway, I read the memoir that Matthew Perry wrote, and on Goodreads, I rated it 1 star.
Wow.
Yeah, it was weird. Like, it was very, very, so like I had talked about in my Goodreads review and on Facebook, I had said that it's really, I don't want to say problematic, but it's like the tone that he has throughout it just makes him come across like a total ass, and it's weird how little like self-awareness he has as to like how he sounds and how it makes him look and everything. It's weird. I don't know. I'm trying to find the screenshot of my review, but I can't find it. But anyway, because Goodreads is weird. I should probably just go to Goodreads. But yeah, did you have any interest in reading this Memoir.Tiny?
I had a little bit because I remember the news coming out where he, talks about Keanu Reeves, and
yeah,
I was like, dude, you can't talk shit about Keanu Reeves, man. Like he's been like adopted as like America's sweetheart kind of.
Yeah.
Like they kind of kicked Taylor Swift to the curb, and now it's Keanu Reeves, man.
Right.
You can't do that, Chief. And I didn't really care. Like I mean, like obviously when I read it, I was like, oh, that's kind of a shitty thing to say, but but I that's the only. I was sort of curious if there was going to be other shit that came out from the memoir like that.
Yeah.
And I've always felt like Matthew Perry's probably a dick, like probably an asshole. Just I don't know. He just kind of seems like it. And he's I don't know. I kind of get that feeling from him. I think he's a great like Chandler's fucking amazing, and like his other roles and like the whole 9 yards and stuff. He's great. Like he's super funny.
Yeah.
But I just feel like off the camera, like I've seen him in a couple interviews, he just seems like a dick, and I don't know. And I mean, it's horrible that he has serious addiction issues, and like I don't wish that on him by any means.
Right.
And I know he suffered through that for years, and that's not right. I don't like that for him, but and I'm sure he has a lot to share regarding that and overcoming that and everything. But I don't know. I just feel like he's probably a dick, and I don't know that I wanna follow his story because of that. I guess
I honestly, it would be a waste of time. Honestly, like it's. So here's kind of the bullet points. So I'm not going to read the Goodreads review, but the bullet points of it that I had problems with. As a big fan of Friends, first of all, he doesn't really talk that much about Friends, which is fine. What he does make a habit of doing throughout it, and this is, in the grand scheme of things, this is something that, this isn't the worst offense that he did, but it is like egregious and kind of gross. But like a good portion of the book is him talking about how attracted he is to the various women that he has encountered in his life in Hollywood. And to the point that it's not like he's sharing like anecdotes about sexual conquests or anything. There's some of that, but it's basically like just about like, I would say maybe 98% of every woman that is referenced in this book is referenced on a scale of how attractive he finds them and how much he wants to sleep with them. And it's just really off-putting, but maybe the most egregious of that I think, and maybe this isn't the most egregious aspect of it, but just given the fact that, given the fact that I know that, he worked with this person for 10 years on a sitcom, the extent that he talks about Jennifer Aniston in the book is basically, I was the last one to be cast for Friends. I had met her before on another project or something, and then he just goes into like she was the most she was the hottest person, and the biggest struggle for me in 1994 was trying to figure out how, like, it was immediately clear that she was not interested in me at all, so I needed to gauge how much time I could spend staring at her without it being weird. And like, he's just objectifying this woman who is like, and maybe this is why it's kind of jarring to me, but it's like, this is someone that you worked with for a decade on a sitcom, on one of the biggest sitcoms of in television's history. And that's the extent that you have to say about this person. Like, that is all that you have to say about this person that you worked with daily for 10 years. And there's some other stuff sprinkled in about how, like, the cast at a couple of points had, like, approached him about his substance abuse problems and everything. But, like, for him to boil down so many women in his life to whether or not he would fuck them is really, really just weird and really dickish to me. And it's just
juvenile.
Yeah, very juvenile, very, very juvenile. But even probably equally troublesome for me is that, and granted, this is something like this, it is a very, very messy topic. The substance abuse, recovery, all of that. Like that, I truly sympathize with him. I appreciate that he is open about it in the book, but there is such a weird, noticeable trend in the book where basically anytime he talks about his addiction and anytime he talks about a relapse, and there are several because he spans the course of probably like a couple of decades basically, and there are several times where he relapsed. Almost every time, I think of those times, which there are maybe half a dozen, maybe more, there is one time where he says, like, I made a mistake and this is my fault. Almost every single other one is, well, you know, she had a Vicodin pill in her jacket that I found when we were arguing. And like the implication is that that's why I relapsed that time. And it even begins with him saying that, like, when I was a baby, I was a colicky baby, and the doctor that my parents took me to prescribed a drug to get me to calm down. And like the implication is that's why I'm an addict. And I'm like, sure, but isn't like one of the steps taking responsibility for your actions? Like, what?
Right.
It was so weird. It was so weird. And like the fact that this book is supposed to be about self-actualization and recovery and the hardships of that, which he details and everything. The fact that he's not taking responsibility for it, or he isn't actually self-actualizing and everything, like if that's an issue, like if that's something that he's not capable of doing, fine, but like who's going to read this who has those same issues and think that like, oh, okay, well, he's like, he has this demeanor about it. What, like, maybe the whole system's wrong. I don't know. It's really off-putting.
Damn. That's a shame. It sounds very juvenile. It sounds like, based on what you told me, it sounds like it's almost like the perspective of like a 22-year-old kid.
Absolutely.
Like who's telling this, it doesn't know how to process it and is just juvenile, frankly. Yeah.
Oh, 100%. And yeah, I was really disappointed in the book. It was not not good. Yeah.
That's a shame. Yeah, and I know another good thing is he's been an advocate of certain forms of treatment and stuff like that. Like I can't speak to, again, not an expert. I can't speak to the details, but research has evolved greatly about addiction and how it works. And he was involved in how treatment has evolved. He was involved in how treatment has evolved for addiction, and he got better from it, and how, addiction is more of a disease than a weakness or whatever. And that's changed the psychology of how they treat addiction now. And that, I'm sure I'm grossly underrepresenting it by my description there, but I just know in the past he's become an advocate of that, and that helps people, and like that's a good thing. But and I respect him for that. But yeah, if it's strange that that's the kind of approach he took with his memoir about his addiction and his life in Hollywood, is that he talked about stuff like that. That's just really a shame, and I'm a little surprised, frankly. Like I figured he'd be a little more prescient and a little more humble, I guess.
Yes. Yeah, and it's something that it's really like there are moments in the book where he talks about like Alcoholics Anonymous, and like when he is like in recovery, like he really appreciates the steps and he appreciates the organization of Alcoholics Anonymous. He even sponsored people and helped people. Like there's a whole passage where he talks about like maybe the reason that I'm here, the reason why I'm not dead from my addiction is because I'm supposed to help other people. And like, that's great. I love that. And it's really bizarre that is just barely touched on. Like he briefly talks about that and then there's nothing. It's back to, having a friends with benefits deal for 6 years with someone who is a celebrity that he doesn't name, but I looked it up later. But and then having kind of a little bit of a grudge against her because she wouldn't go see his play and stuff. Like weird like axe to grind against people. Like he pauses at one point toward the end because like he was eating something and like he describes it as all of his teeth just fell out. Just they were done, like gone. And he went to the dentist to get, that fixed and everything. And he said like, oh, it was excruciating pain and everything. And then he stops and is like, to the dentist and everything. Fuck you. Fuck your family. I don't think he says fuck your family, but like, fuck everything about like, you were the worst person. I'm like, this is a book about your life, man. Like why, like what are you doing?
Wow.
Yeah. So it was really weird. Also, the structure of it was maddening. Like, I mentioned that it needed to be edited severely because it's not like a traditional memoir where it's going from like chronological order. Like, okay, I was a colicky baby and a doctor gave me medicine, so now that made me an addict. I'm not responsible for it. To like, oh, this is me now. Everything in between there is jumping around to like, yeah, I was a struggling actor. I really wanted the role of Chandler. And then like the next passage is like, so I was on the phone with Adam McKay and he was working on Don't Look Up, and I was supposed to have a role in that, but that fell through. And then it's like, oh, and then season 5 of Friends was, and I'm like, what? Where, like, put it in a good timeline, like make it make sense. So yeah.
Damn.
Yeah. So that's my rant about Matthew Perry's book. I don't recommend it at all. I do recommend reading the Expanse series and following along on Patreon to my read along reviews. Yeah. But anyway, yeah.
That's a shame.
Yeah, it really is. It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also the Keanu Reeves stuff is really weird in that too. But yeah. Anyway, should we go into our extended potpourri, Tiny?
Yeah, we should.
Yeah. Do you want to get us kicked off? Again, this is extended potpourri. We're just going to be sharing things that we've watched, kind of going back and forth, and sharing our thoughts on things we watched. Yeah. So, Tiny, Do you want to get us kicked off? Yeah.
The first one. These will all be pretty brief. The first thing I wanted to talk about that I watched recently, a lot of documentaries pop up on my Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
And the one that popped up recently that it's an event I had sort of, I don't want to say forgotten about, but had kind of always meant to come back to. The documentary is called American Manhunt, the Boston Marathon Bombing.
Mm-hmm.
Which is obviously a limited series about the Boston Marathon bombing from 2013. And it was a well-done documentary. They had all of the major characters from that event were involved, like the special agent in charge, the police commissioner, officers who were actually pulling triggers at these guys. I mean, they got everybody who was involved in this was in the documentary. So it was well done. I liked the documentary, but it was more of a reaction to that event. I remember when that was going on. That was when Twitter was kind of maybe peaking or kind of becoming super relevant. And I just remember following a lot of that live on Twitter. Mm-hmm. People were sharing stuff about it, and people in Watertown, where the Dzhokhar Tsarnaev kid like went missing or was like fled, and they were searching for him in Watertown, and there were people who lived there who were like, it's like a war zone right now. We're all locked in our homes, and there's police marching around like soldiers. Like, I just remember my reaction to that at the time was like, this is nuts. Like, I mean, this is martial law, and mm-hmm. on the streets of an American city. It's just really disturbing, and it's interesting to think of it in the context of modern terrorism. We always think about 9/11 and the impact of 9/11. It changed the whole world and everything. But it's interesting to look at this in the context of the post-terrorism world after 9/11. Like, this was a disturbing response to terrorism where mm-hmm. people's rights were put on hold. People were told to stay in their homes, and police just showed up to their house and went into their house without warrants, with no regard for their rights, no search warrants. I mean, it was just, and I don't want to say everybody was fine with it, but there were no repercussions for that at all.
Oh, and wow.
I don't know that there should have been, frankly. Mm. Like, I don't know that. I think that was the right thing to do, right? Like, and that's terrible. I don't feel right saying that, but the alternative was, if he had been hiding in someone's home and they hadn't done that, it's a lot of what ifs,
Yeah.
And it's a difficult thing to analyze in that regard. And I'm sure there are people who would argue that it was tyranny, it was an overreach by the government. Mm-hmm. And they're probably right. I can't say that they were wrong, but it was just really interesting to see it explored in this documentary, because I remember feeling that, like, it was like I think it was like a Friday night when they ended up catching the kid. Finally, he was hiding in the boat in Watertown. Mm-hmm. But I just remember seeing, like, I think I may have tweeted something like, "This is going to be interesting to see all the legality of this play out, and how this kid gets sentenced, and if any of these cops get arrested, like, what's going to happen? Like, is the police commissioner going to get fired? Is the damn governor of Massachusetts going to be kicked out of office for installing martial law?" Like, I just remember thinking, like, this is going to be, seeing this all play out in court over the next couple of years is going to be really interesting. And I feel like it never really went anywhere. It never really got interesting.
Right.
But it was just, I was fascinated by the documentary. There was a ton of footage that exists that I didn't even know existed. There was a point where the two brothers were in a shootout with the cops in Watertown, and they were like throwing pipe bombs at the cops.
Oh, yeah.
And like, I sort of remember that happening, but I had no idea there was footage of that. Like, it was just kind of amazing to see all the footage and the photos, and they actually show like the security footage of the second bomb going off. Like, you actually see, because it basically happened right in front of a security camera. And I was like, man, I'm kind of surprised they're actually showing that,
Yeah.
But not that it was distasteful necessarily, but like, I think a child died as a result of that bomb going off, anyways, I don't have a lot to say about like the artistry of the documentary or anything. It was more of just my reaction to that event and how I had kind of almost forgotten about it, or it's, it's something that it kind of got resolved the best way it could. Like, it was this crazy manhunt, and like, I think a lot of people made a lot of mistakes, and but it was really interesting to kind of revisit it, I guess.
Nice. Did you ever see the movie Patriots Day?
Yeah, after I finished this, I ended up watching that again, the Peter Berg movie. It's a solid movie.
It wasn't bad.
I like it. Yeah, I like Peter Berg. He's a little hokey sometimes.
Yeah, but he's a little hit or miss sometimes, but
yeah.
So it's American Manhunt. It's on Netflix. The Boston Marathon bombing. Is it any relation to that Manhunt series that they did, like Manhunt Unabomber, Manhunt something else?
I don't think so.
Okay. Because I was trying to look, and I don't think it's connected. But I remember you being a big fan of that series, or that at least the Unabomber one, I think, right?
Yeah, the Unabomber one was really good.
Nice.
Yeah.
I may have to check it out. It's a docu-series on Netflix, right?
Yeah, it's just 3 episodes.
3 episodes. Okay. Yeah, maybe I'll check it out. Yeah, that brings it to me. It's my turn. Oh my God, I forgot. So I do want to say, I forgot to mention this up top, but I currently, as of this recording, Indy Film Fest is going on here in Indianapolis and virtually. So they had their closing night stuff on this past weekend, and then this upcoming weekend, I think they're going to do the Best of the Fest thing in person at the Can Theater. But running from now, like currently until April 30th, they're doing virtual stuff, so you can go on indyfilmfest.org and watch stuff virtually. I have been very fortunate to be able to provide coverage of Indy Film Fest for Nuvo.net. If you guys remember last year in October, I did some reviews for Nuvo regarding Heartland Film Festival, and I'm back at it with Indy Film Fest reviews. So I kind of want to give a rundown of 4 of the movies that I've watched, and 1 short film actually that I'm not providing a review for, but I watched it today. I'll go ahead and talk about that first. A short film. It's on the I can't remember what shorts block that was. I think it was, the shorts block is Not Your Average Story. It's basically a collection of a bunch of different short films. And one of them that I watched was a short film called Junebug. Let me pull it up real quick and see if I can get a plot summary. It's very interesting, very peculiar. And I was really into it. So the plot summary, courtesy of IMDb: Junebug is a nature documentary-obsessed loner learns to socialize after nearly killing a Junebug in his backyard. And it's written and directed by Vincent Dixon. And yeah, this was a really interesting short film. It has this like vibe to it, or this energy to it, that's about this kind of, like it says, this kind of nature documentary obsessed loner who doesn't really have like a social circle or anything. He's very awkward. So like, it's only 9 minutes, just short of 10 minutes long. But in that 10 minutes, it's a very interesting just dive into this loner's kind of life, basically, and his attempt to help this creature that he injured and kind of nurse it back to health. It has these parallels to his own life. And I think that the energy of it and the overall kind of metaphor of it, the kind of thing is that, you need to socialize to live kind of thing. It was really interesting and really well done. I really enjoyed it. It's Junebug, and it's on the virtual site for Indie Film Fest, running through April 30th in the Not Your Average Story block of short films. So that's the short film that I watched. Any comments on that, Tiny? Any interest in it? I know it's kind of vague.
Sounds pretty fascinating. Have you watched any other short films from?
No other short films, but I have watched 4 feature-length films. I can kind of run those down. I'll put links in the show notes to my full reviews that are running on Nuvo.net. But let me just kind of run through them really quickly, kind of rapid fire. So the first one I watched was this movie called Free Time, which is about, the plot summary is Drew quits his job, then quickly decides he wants it back. And it's called Free Time, written by, or directed by Ryan Martin Brown. This is a very interesting, kind of quirky comedy film that is very dry in its comedy, but it has this kind of, I don't want to necessarily say self-awareness, but it's very much poking fun at a certain type of 20-something individual. And by that I mean that this main character, Drew, he has this like energy to him that it's like he doesn't have very strong convictions. But when he is put in a corner to where, like, the whole idea of him quitting his job springs up kind of out of nowhere when he is talking to someone at work about an HR position and realizes that he has no chance in hell of getting that HR position. And it's just kind of an innocuous conversation. And then he's like, oh, okay, well, I quit. And from there, he's just realizing like, okay, well, now everything else is going to fall apart because I don't have money. And there's a brief moment where he's like, this is just something this is everything that's wrong with capitalism and everything. And it's this interesting satire of kind of that listless and directionless, rather, 20-something persona who is indignant as a defense mechanism without having much substance behind that indignation, and how that is kind of at war with rationalizing, the need to have an income and, to provide like the things that you need out of life, like a home and food. So I don't know. It's kind of a quirky, fun comedy. I enjoyed it. It's very, very bizarre and interesting in a good way. So that's called Free Time. It's also virtual on Indy Film Fest. You can get access to that through April 30th. So
nice.
Yeah. And then I will talk about another narrative feature, and then I'll give you your turn, and then I'll talk about the 2 documentaries that I watched.
Okay.
But probably my favorite thing that I've watched of Indie Film Fest this year is this relationship drama called In a Good Way, which is... the plot summary, courtesy of IMDb, is Margot and David rekindle their once loving marriage that fell apart, leaving them forced to live separate lives for years. This is this intimate relationship drama starring. It's basically a two-hander between the actors playing David and Margot. So David is played by Ryan Ballas and Margot is played by Audrey Kovar. And they give this just intimate and interesting performance. Like the chemistry is off the charts. And there are these moments sprinkled throughout it where it's like the filmmakers know that they are heading toward like the traditional like relationship drama trappings and tropes, but then they pivot like immediately into something kind of different. So for instance, there's a scene where David is talking to his friend about like the struggles of rekindling of romance with Margot. And it is playing off of that very, very cliched kind of prerequisite scene in any relationship drama where it's like, hey, the best friend character is like, yeah, you need to, settle down and, like be the vessel for like what the audience thinks for what the character needs to do through the relationship drama. But what's interesting is that it juxtaposes that with Margot at home doing like a cam session, because she's like a cam girl, I think. And it's just her getting this validation from them on the website. It's not painting it in a way that is disparaging of sex work or anything like that, or cam work or anything like that. It's not judgmental of it, but the juxtaposition of that with the conversation that David has with his friend about the hardships of the relationship just kind of creates this three-dimensional idea, or this hint that, like, okay, that is something that maybe he isn't too cool with, or maybe that's something that could have been like an issue with them. I don't know. There's a lot of depth to it that I could completely have misread everything there, but it was a lot to kind of chew on, and I really appreciated the performances and everything. Yeah. So that's In a Good Way. Really good. Probably my favorite of what I've watched this Indie Film Fest. But yeah, so yeah, that's nice. In a Good Way. Yeah. Again, that's also available through April 30th if you purchase a virtual ticket on indiefilmfest.org. All right. And Tiny, your next extended potpourri segment.
Yeah. So I just was kind of looking for a movie to watch, and I kind of stumbled upon on Amazon the movie 13 Lives, which came out last year, and it is the telling of the rescuing of the boys soccer team from Thailand who got trapped in a cave. The real life story. And this came out last year. It was actually directed by Ron Howard, which I did not know. I remember seeing a trailer for it, and like there was a good cast and everything. I was like, I'm gonna have to check that out. So it's funny because I feel bad because I didn't quite finish the movie. I have like 20 minutes left.
Okay.
It's surprisingly long. I was going to finish it on my lunch break today, but I had to leave and go do something. But I watched the bulk of the movie. It's really weird because it's well made. They filmed it on location. Like a lot of it's filmed in Thailand. The cast, I believe, I didn't look into every actor or anything, but I think the cast is mostly actual Thai actors. If not Thai, they're at least Southeast Asian. Could be Laotian or Cambodian, Vietnamese. I'm not really sure, but at least there's that level of authenticity there. And then the cast of the other characters, the other actors it's a really great cast. Viggo Mortensen and Colin Farrell, Joel Edgerton, three really good actors. So it's got a lot working in its favor, and Ron Howard directing it and producing it and everything. The movie is good. I'm interested. I was very interested in it. It's, again, a lot of authenticity, but it just has a very weird feel to it. I feel like there's no tone to the movie at all.
Oh, interesting.
It's so, because Ron Howard, I mean, shit, like, Apollo 13 is like a masterpiece.
Yep.
And the tone, that movie's all tone. It's so edge of your seat, nervous, nerve-wracking, thrilling tone. That's brilliant movie. And it's like absent from this movie. It's so weird. I can't explain it. It's like the characterization and the weight of this event is just not, like, all the facts are there and all the pieces are there. It's just, there's something missing from this movie. It's really weird. It made it, it just made it difficult for me to connect to it. And the characters just feel like, again, they're just kind of, I don't want to say they're going through the motions. I don't think that's fair. Like, Viggo Mortensen and Colin Farrell especially are kind of the two main guys that have a lot of the meat to work with. But and they do a decent job. It feels disconnected. There's just this weird disconnect that I can't quite put my finger on or can't quite categorize. But they both did a fine job. Like it's not like they were bad or they were hamming it up or be over the top or anything. I really just can't put my finger on what's missing from this movie, except that it feels like it has no tone. The second half is better. Like there's a lot more, the stakes kind of get raised and it gets better, but maybe the ending will be super good. I'm not really sure, but what I have to say though, like I sort of remember when this happened. It was back in 2018. I don't know if I remember the conclusion of what happens, but I remember it being a big deal. But I have to say, what they did, I'm not going to spoil anything. What they did in real life to save these boys is like one of the most ballsy, miraculous things I can imagine. Like it's so incredible. Like I'm blown away that these guys pulled this off and did this. And like I had the idea and the notion to do it. Like it should not have worked. Like all these boys this soccer team should have all died. Like they should all be dead right now. Like it is miraculous that they're here. And it's not even like maybe this is what they were going for in the movie. It's not even like a feel good thing. It's like they did this, took this risk to save these boys. And there was this undertone of like, they're going to try this and they're all just going to die. Like it's not going to work and all these kids are going to die. Like that's like what it felt like.
Wow.
But man, what they did is just amazing. Like I'm not going to spoil it, but it's just incredible what they were able to achieve. I mean, for those who don't know, these boys got trapped in a cave and the cave flooded. There was like a bunch of rain that was not forecasted that they didn't know about. The cave regularly floods, but it wasn't the rainy season. So they were okay. But then all of a sudden this giant storm comes through and these boys get trapped. And so it's, part of the cave you're walking and hiking, and then another part you have to dive underwater for, you have to be in scuba gear and dive underwater. And it's so arduous that it's like 3 miles into this cave, but it takes like 7 hours.
Jeez.
Because you have to dive through this little tunnel that's 2 feet wide. I mean, it's absolutely horrifying. I will say that, like, I'm not a fan of caves. I get claustrophobic, and like one of my worst fears would be going into a cave and getting stuck in the cave and just starving to death or suffocating to death or being drowned in a flash flood. Like it is so nerve-wracking to me. And the movie captured that pretty well. Actually, that's one thing they actually communicated pretty well in the movie. But I do kind of recommend it. I'd be curious to hear what other people think of this movie. It's got, let's see, what rating does it have on? It's got a 7.8 rating on IMDb, which is pretty good. So maybe I'm sort of in the minority here. Maybe I'm just not picking up on something here. I don't know, but you haven't seen it, have you, Matt?
I haven't. It was in the big stack of screeners that I got last year for award season. It was one that I just didn't get around to. I think it was last year or the year before. And I didn't get around to it, mostly because, like you said, it's pretty long. It's like over 2.5 hours.
Yeah,
maybe
it's over
closing
2.5
to 3.
hours.
Yeah, and I was like, I'll get to it maybe. But I'm definitely curious to check it out. Yeah,
you might react to it differently than I did, or other people might. I don't know. Maybe I'm just not picking up on something. But National Geographic made a actual documentary. Called The Rescue, which I'm gonna. It's on Disney Plus. I'm gonna watch that because I'm very curious in the accuracy and how they actually did all this. And I know there's like real footage out there of what they did. So I'm going to watch that next. So.
Yeah. And if memory serves, I think they both came out like very close together, 13 Lives and The Rescue. And I think maybe that caused a little bit of overshadowing. I think I may be conflating something else, but, okay. But yeah, but that's interesting. That's a shame that the tone is kind of weird. Ron Howard is kind of, like you said, he's great when he's great. Like, Apollo 13. He did Rush. Was that the movie?
Rush.
Yeah.
Very underrated. Very underrated
good
movie.
Very good. But he's also kind of like a journeyman director. He kind of doesn't really, he doesn't have like a distinctive vibe, I guess. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah. So that's unfortunate, but yeah. So that's 13 Lives. It's on Amazon Prime, and we'll get back to Tiny when he finishes it. The other two Indie Film Fest films that I want to talk about are two documentaries that I watched and I reviewed. Of course, they're on Nuvo.net. I'll put a link in the show notes and everything. The first one I want to talk about is The Smell of Money, which is a documentary by Sean Bannon. It is, I believe, produced by Kate Mara and David Lowery, the filmmaker. So it's pretty interesting. But the plot summary, courtesy of Letterboxd, I have up here, is a century after her grandfather claimed his freedom from slavery, Elsie Herring and her rural North Carolina community fight the world's largest pork corporation for their freedom to enjoy fresh air, clean water, and a life without the stench of manure. And this was a very beautifully well-made documentary. There was nothing necessarily striking about it in particular, but just the entirety of it is just very well done, well crafted documentary. But basically the long and short of it is that this like hog farms that are near this rural North Carolina community, they are in the practice of having hogs like in these pens, and all of the hogs' waste, their urine, feces, everything goes through the grates down into like the bottom of it and gets pulled into giant football field sized lagoons that is just filth, just grotesque. And the practice that the hog farmers do is that to drain the lagoons, the cesspools, is to just spray it on the crops, and that contaminates the air. That just creates a very, very disgusting and dangerous living condition for the people in the area. And it's the documentary really strikes a nerve because it is showcasing this community and the struggles of this woman, Elsie, who is fighting for decades to get just the right to get her air clean and to not potentially shorten her life and expose herself to respiratory illness and any other type of illness. And what really kind of struck a nerve with me is that, like, the knee-jerk response is like, well, try to move, like, try to just get out of there, because it's an uphill battle. But the documentary does a great job of just explaining that, like, yeah, like her, like, grandfather or great-grandfather, like, whoever in her family, like, built this house. This is her property. And, like, that's something that just resonated with me, that like, no, there's no reason why you should have to leave because these people don't care or anything. So like, fight the good fight, do it. And it's a very interesting documentary in the way that it shows the different members of the community and their just collective activism. It is a bleak documentary as well, because it is a very, very big uphill battle for these people to try to get any kind of traction on any kind of movement there. But another thing that I really appreciated about the documentary is that it then also goes into the just bigger like issue of like the cross-contamination, the contamination of like different just gross things that can rise up out of it. So like having not only hogs, but like having birds and everything, like in close quarters and everything, cross-species contamination and everything. That's what causes global pandemics. That's what causes outbreaks of swine flu and like COVID-19. It's like it paints such a clear picture. And I think in light of the COVID pandemic, like, yeah, that is absolutely true. Like this is egregious. This is something that needs to not be a thing. This needs to be regulated. Like but the images of the lagoons is just disgusting. It's kind of infuriating, and it's a well done documentary. I liked it.
Wow, that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Does the documentary at any point give a perspective from the pig farmers' perspective at all?
Somewhat. And that's the thing that's also pretty infuriating about it, is that it doesn't, like, at one point they say like none of the hog farmers agreed to be in the documentary. Like none of them did. They do have someone who was a hog farmer who is kind of like a rehabilitated hog farmer, for lack of a better word. He's someone who is like, he's realizing the error of his ways and everything. But the big ones in the area, like, they go into how they kind of have a controlling stake in people of authority in that community. Insofar as, like, I think the owner of one of them, or the big one, is like the chief of police. So there's a lot of obstacles there. So they don't really give like a big, they don't have the ability to give the pig farmers like a voice, because they didn't want to be in it, because clearly they're in the wrong. It's very interesting.
That sounds really fascinating.
Yeah. It's The Smell of Money, and it is currently on Indie Film Fest virtually through April 30th. And then the other documentary that I watched, that I again also reviewed on Nouveau.net. Tiny, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this, but it's called Project Home. And it is, I will try to quickly find the plot summary. Project Home, 3D Printing the Future. The plot summary is, can 3D printed houses solve the global housing crisis? Tech entrepreneurs test the limits of this new construction method as families' futures hang in the balance. It's directed by Laura Waters Henson. It is very, very interesting. As someone who, I am, of course, a big fan of science fiction, and as I've been reading The Expanse and other science fiction and everything, I've been thinking about, like, God, people, like, I want us to be in space. I want us to go to space. I want us to colonize space. I have this thought all the time. But Project Home is about, like it says, 3D printing homes. And what they do is they have this massive 3D printer that's basically like the same design as like a home 3D printer scaled up to a massive scale. And it pumps out this concrete that is on a design and everything, on a rig, that creates the framework of a house. And it has cutouts for like windows and everything. And of course they have to do like the wiring and all the other things. But the purpose behind it, or the idea behind it, is that they can construct a structure that can be a home in like a fraction of the amount of time that it takes to construct a house. And the idea is that this could, and at a fraction of the cost, and that the idea is that this could, if implemented, and if the technology is, because it's still in its infancy, if the technology can be grown to be, adapted and adaptable and everything, this could literally solve the housing crisis in the world. And so that's a big statement and everything. But what I found really engaging about the documentary is that it kind of has these dual narratives going. So the documentary is focused on people from Habitat for Humanity who are using this technology to create a house for this single mother who works 3 jobs and works for Habitat for Humanity. And one of the big things they say at the top is that they're not giving away these houses. Like, these people are buying these houses. And it's just an affordable housing. And that's one of the big things that they kind of highlight in the documentary. But then elsewhere, they also have like a contract for a full community that they're building in Mexico, in this town in Mexico. I can't remember the name of it. But so we have basically the micro version of it with the single mother, and then we have the macro, the kind of testing ground of like, can this be sustainable in creating a whole community with this? And what I found really interesting is that there's a lot of obstacles there. There are a lot of struggles, like you guessed it, a global pandemic caused a big rift in that, but also elsewhere, like the problems of getting the equipment to Mexico, like clearing customs to do that, and battling weather and training and all of this stuff. It's really fascinating. A couple of the things I found kind of, there was one like pretty, a big kind of shortcoming of the documentary for me was that throughout the documentary, it brings up how this technology of 3D printing houses, which is just basically like, it looks like a toothpaste tube being squeezed out of like concrete squeezing out of it. And one of the big things is that there are people like online who second guess it, or they think that like, yeah, this isn't really the affordable housing that they're making it out to be. This technology isn't sustainable and everything. And I feel like that, because I'm interested in it. And when they bring that up, like they literally show clips from YouTube videos of people like claiming to debunk everything. But the documentary doesn't spend a lot, if any, time addressing those claims that they're showing. And it's like, I wish that they would have done more, because I wanted to be more invested in it, because I'm already hooked on it. And I was also thinking like, God, that would be amazing. Like, just, to colonize like the moon or something, just throw a 3D printer up there and just create buildings. Anyway, stupid. But that probably wouldn't even work. But anyway, it's called Project Home on Indie Film Fest virtually through April 30th. Really, really interesting. I like any kind of, fringe technology kind of thing, like out of the box thinking. And if the technology isn't there now, if it's not something that's sustainable now, I think that it's very interesting as a possibility for the future, and seeing like the future of it and everything, and see how it can be implemented on a large scale. So really interesting documentary, Project Home. Tiny, what do you think about that?
That's really cool. I've seen videos of those 3D printers and how they pump concrete and stuff. It's super fascinating. And like, even if it's not like, your average couple is in the market to buy a home or build a home, like maybe it's not that viable or a popular option at the moment, but what it could be popular for is like solving the homeless problem.
Yeah.
Right? Like if someone just raise funds to house homeless people, you could build a whole building with units made with one of these 3D printers.
Yeah.
And it'd be a fraction of the cost, and they would be durable. The homeless population could come and go, or you could add on to it as needed. It's very modular. Like, that's super fascinating, and I'm interested in it. I'm sure I'd love the documentary. I'm always interested in how things are built and stuff like that. I love to watch people build things, so I'm sure I'd be really interested in it. That sounds really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be very interested to hear your thoughts on it, if you get around to seeing it at some point.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And again, all of those reviews are on Nuvo.net. I'll put a link in the show notes for my Nuvo reviews. Please go read them. I'm proud and pleased that I was able to get that opportunity again. Tiny, your next thing. Do you want to do one more? Do you have?
Yeah, this is my last one. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Also a documentary, also on Netflix.
Nice.
This came out last year. It's called Race, Bubba Wallace. It's the limited miniseries on Netflix that followed the NASCAR driver, Bubba Wallace, for his first season with the new race team, 2311 Racing.
Mm-hmm.
I had heard about this documentary. I didn't watch it when it came out. I used to be a huge NASCAR fan.
Mm-hmm.
This was back when NASCAR was at its peak. This was the early 2000s. From I want to say about 2000 to 2008 or 9, NASCAR was the fastest growing sport in the country.
Wow.
It was hugely popular. It was the peak of NASCAR, which has been around since the 50s. And I was part of that. I became a big, huge NASCAR fan. I watched every race. I loved Dale Earnhardt Jr. was my favorite driver. I was really into it, but the NASCAR fell off drastically. They changed it a lot. They changed the sport. A lot of the older drivers that I liked were retiring. So I basically just slowly lost interest in it and became more of an IndyCar fan. But I recently got back into NASCAR, and just kind of decided I didn't have a driver yet. I was like, these are all new guys. Everyone I'm not familiar with any of these drivers. So I didn't have a driver yet. And, I was very interested in Bubba Wallace. Mm-hmm. And so I watched this documentary and I kind of fell in love with the guy. I think he is, a super, super important figure in sports right now. And they address that in the documentary. You know, this is a sport. This is a league, NASCAR, that has deep roots in the South. It is an inherently Southern sport, and it is dominated by white men. And a lot of the white men that were involved in this sport in the past were probably racist. The first black driver in NASCAR, they go into it, he won a race, but they didn't let him win the race. They literally would not give him the trophy, even though he finished first place.
Wow.
And the reason is because back in the day, you would have, like, they still do it. It's kind of a ceremonial thing in a lot of races. They do it for the Indy 500. There's the 500 Princess. And traditionally, the winner of the race goes and kisses that girl. That doesn't happen anymore. But I mean, back in the day, they used to do it at the Indy 500. And of course, all of those princesses were white girls. And back in the 50s and 60s in the South, you couldn't have a black guy kissing a white girl. It was literally illegal. And so,
Jesus. Yeah.
And you know, they go into that in the documentary, and it's just insane that used to be the norm. But I kind of got off track. Bubba Wallace is super important because he has come into this sport, and he's been the most successful, probably, black driver in NASCAR history. And he's also doing it at a time when race relations are amped up in the United States. And he got thrown right into the throes of it. There was this whole controversy where there was a noose in his garage.
Right.
Someone hung a noose that was in the news for a while. And Bubba Wallace chose to speak up about Black Lives Matter, and he got involved in the George Floyd, the whole George Floyd controversy and everything. And at the end of the day, I also just love what a competitor he is. The documentary explores how unique racing is, which is another thing that I love. I think, you can look at a lot of other sports, and they're team sports, and a lot of the time you are going up against one opponent, and it's not that those sports aren't difficult, but if you think about a race, it's like having all 32 NFL teams competing against each other all at the same time. You've got 30 to 40 race cars out there, which all represent a team who are all competing against each other, and only one of them gets to win. It's like the Super Bowl every Sunday.
Wow.
And it's super, super hard to win a race. It's really hard. And it is an endurance thing. You're out there for 400 miles or 500 miles, and that can take 4, 5, 6 hours. Sometimes it's August and it's 90 degrees outside, and that car can get up to 140 degrees inside of it.
Yeah.
It's just this documentary so well explored the difficulties of what it's like to be a race car driver, and it's super uber competitive. There's the money in NASCAR is not what it used to be. It's hard to get sponsors. It's hard to put a team together. And I'm amazed that anyone wants to do it, because it's so difficult, and there's the amount of pressure is insane. You could another factor of racing is you could just die. You could just die.
Oh yeah,
just going out and doing your job, and it happens. I mean, it happens a lot less, but it still happens. And there's that pressure. There's the pressure to win, to not let your team down. It's just amazing, and I'm astounded at the way that Bubba Wallace navigated all of that pressure, along with the pressure of being black in this sport and race relations being as tricky as they were at the time. And amidst all that, he came out and he told NASCAR, hey, you should ban the Confederate flag at races.
Nice.
I mean, that the balls of the guy to say that. And he said, like, it's not like he did a press release. He went on CNN and was interviewed, and he said it himself. He was like,
That's
NASCAR needs to
awesome.
I mean, the balls of the guy to do that.
And did they?
And yeah, they did.
Oh, nice.
They
Very
did.
nice.
Yeah, to NASCAR's credit, they banned the Confederate flag.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm really impressed with the guy. He talked about mental health and how he struggled with his mental health, and he asked people to help him. I'm really amazed at his abilities as a person and as a driver, and I love how he takes on the pressure. And I became a big Bubba Wallace fan watching this show, and my enthusiasm for NASCAR is a lot higher than it was, and I've gotten back into it. I've been watching all the races, and unfortunately he's not having a good season. He was this Sunday, they were at Talladega, which he's won at Talladega in the past. He's really good at the super speedways, and he was kicking ass all day. He was in the top 5. He led like 70 laps. Literally half a lap to go, he got fucking spun out and finished 28th. God. I was so freaking mad.
Jeez.
I mean, but yeah, the documentary, even if you're not into racing, I think people, because honestly, there's not a ton of racing in it. A lot of it's about his personal life and the controversy he dealt with. I think you'd find it interesting, Matt.
Nice.
It's really cool. I really love the sport of racing, and this documentary really documents why it's such a fascinating sport.
That sounds very appealing to me, because like I we've talked about it before and everything, but like, I mean, both of us growing up at Speedway, you're a big race fan. But no, like you're a huge race fan, and I get it. I totally get it. I appreciate the athleticism that is involved in the, like you said, the endurance, the skill, the absolute skill that it takes. Is something that is so fascinating to me. So even if I'm not like a big fan of racing, or I don't follow the sport or anything, I do have a lot of respect, just, from like osmosis, from being near it all, like the majority of my life. So maybe I will check that. That's race. But what is
race
it
semicolon Bubba Wallace?
Okay, nice. And it's on Netflix.
it's on Netflix, and it's only 6
Nice.
episodes. It's not
Sweet.
it's not super long. Yeah, if you want to see a demonstration of the athleticism of auto racing, last year in the road course at Indianapolis Motor Speedway NASCAR, one of the drivers, he has a funny name. He's a really good guy. His name's AJ Allmendinger.
Okay.
He's won that race a few times. He's really good at road courses. They wear a cooling suit that keeps them cool and there's a mechanical aspect to it. And AJ Allmendinger's suit failed.
Oh God.
Like early on in the race, and it's in August.
Jesus.
It was like 85 degrees, and it was like 120 degrees in the car, and his suit failed. And I think there's video on YouTube of him at the end of that race. He didn't finish real well, but he pulled in to the pits, and he gets out and just collapses because he was like, and like he had to have medical attention, and he's fine. He was fine. But I mean, like the video was kind of scary to watch. Like I felt really bad for the guy. Yeah, I mean, these guys are athletes. It's a crazy sport.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, I'll have to check that out.
I think you'd like it. Yeah.
Nice. And I will just round us out with a quick kind of update on something that I think I've talked about before in passing, or actually I did a season review on Patreon of it, but for season 1 of How I Met Your Father, which is on Hulu. It is the Hilary Duff produced and starring series inspired by How I Met Your Mother. I have been catching up with season 2. They basically did, I think they did 10 episodes last year for season 1. And season 2, they have 20 episodes, but they did 11 and then have a mid-season break, and then they're going to come back in May for the rest. So I'm about 8 episodes into those first 11 episodes. And, there's such an interesting level of nostalgia that I have for that, because we were big How I Met Your Mother fans. I still contend that in its heyday, How I Met Your Mother is an almost perfect meld of that romantic comedy archetype, genre comfort food that I feel, and sitcoms. So it is this comfort food romantic comedy in sitcom form, with some really interesting narrative devices thrown in for a good run of the time. They fumbled it a lot. We don't need to relitigate all that, but I still feel that the storytelling, and there's a lot to really appreciate about How I Met Your Mother. How I Met Your Father is interesting from both my perspective, because I'm older now. I'm in my 30s. It's a different Matt that's watching this show. And also from the fact that it's a different culture that we're in. And so there's no Barney character. There's no Barney Stinson. There's no womanizing character who has a playbook for hooking up and has all of this now problematic, I would say, character traits and everything. Instead, the characters they're pretty strong. The gang is a pretty strong foundation for the story. They all have their quirks and everything. They work together really well. It's the same kind of premise, people in New York City. They are a core group of friends navigating love and relationships and all that, and jobs and everything. It's standard sitcom fare. One of the things that I feel like is, and by the way, it's on Hulu. One of the things I feel is maybe not quite there is I'm not really engaged at all with the central premise of who the father is, which is fine. I don't need to be, but it's just kind of interesting to just not be interested in it. And maybe it's to the show's credit that I'm just more invested in the inner workings of the group. But the other thing that I don't particularly care for is Kim Cattrall plays the older version of Sophie, played by Hilary Duff. And I just don't like that energy. Like Bob Saget doing the narration in How I Met Your Mother was great because he has that paternal sort of like baked in paternal feel to him and resonance and everything. But Kim Cattrall is just like, it's a little too quirky and comedic, and it just doesn't really feel like she's telling any important story. So I don't know. It's a mixed bag, but I am enjoying it. It's pretty solid. The cast is really good, and some of the things that they, some of the shenanigans they get into is a lot of fun. And the ways that the show, calls back to references and incorporates things and people from the original series, from How I Met Your Mother, is a lot of fun. The way it's sprinkled throughout. So yeah, I don't know. Have you watched any of it or have any interest in it?
Interesting. No, I haven't watched any of it. I don't have any interest in it. I think it was a horrible idea. But I didn't know you were watching it. That's interesting. I'm curious, are there any ridiculous links to How I Met Your Mother? Is Hilary Duff's character like Ted Mosby's cousin or something like that?
No. The closest thing, and this is going to spoil the pilot episode, and this is something that I also found pretty interesting, is that the core group, they all kind of come together. They meet in the first episode, basically. The first episode has this whole thing about Sophie, played by Hilary Duff. She's on her way to a Tinder date at a bar. She gets in an Uber that's driven by Jesse, and his best friend is there with him riding along because he's going to propose to his girl. It's a whole thing. A mix-up occurs, then the group all comes together and they become friends. The end of the episode, something that I found really charming about the end of the episode is that up until the end of the episode, there's nothing really connecting it to How I Met Your Mother. In fact, the opening credits say like inspired by the series How I Met Your Mother by Craig Thomas and Carter Bays, I think. I don't know. Who cares?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah. But the end of the episode has Jesse and, oh my God, why can't I think of his roommate's name? They're like, oh, why don't we all get, all get together in our apartment and have like a nightcap or something. And I'm going to find Sid. Okay. Jesse and Sid. And they're like, yeah, this is a great apartment. We got a great deal on it. This old couple from the Wesleyan message boards were moving out and everything. And it's Ted's apartment, and like they live in Ted's apartment. So like that's really it's fun, and like they throw in this ridiculous thing where they're like they even left their swords, and so the swords that are on the mantle are there. So I'm
fine with that.
Yeah, it's fine. It's good. It's a good way to honor the original series and show that they're doing their own thing. I will say that there are up to now there have been 2 characters from How I Met Your. No, there have been more than 2 characters. 2 main characters have shown up. It was a big thing in the finale for the first season, and then the second season has like. It does that thing where it's like the beginning of the season is like, oh, Sophie is in like a fender bender, and then a certain person gets out of the car, and I think I will say, I think the license plate says daddy, to give you an idea of who it is that's in the car.
Gotcha.
But yeah, so it does factor in, it pays homage and honors the original series in unique ways, but it's not dependent on it. And it's by no stretch dependent on, the nostalgia of it. So I appreciate that they're doing their own thing. They're forging their own path, and, I'm enjoying it. It's not as good for me as How I Met Your Mother, but I also admit that How I Met Your Mother just struck such a nerve with me for the time I was in my life and for just the state of media at that point too. Like it just hit that sweet spot for me. So there are a lot of contributing factors, but I appreciate what How I Met Your Father is doing.
Okay, so, interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it is very late, Tiny. I'm so sorry for keeping you up.
It's all right.
Yeah, so I'm going to start playing us out here soon, but I just want to say thank you guys so much for listening. Do you have anything else to say, Tiny? Anything else we want to cover? Anything else we neglected to mention?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Good episode.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I thought so too. Good job. We are going to be back hopefully soon with something. But in the meantime, check out all of our other stuff. Check out my reviews on Nuvo for Indy Film Fest. Check out the other podcast, Tower Junkies. We're finally doing The Dark Tower. Check that out, towerjunkiespod.com. Also check out Anthology, my solo podcast. And of course, if you want more content, go support us on Patreon. All the money goes to paying the fees to keep the podcast running and is greatly appreciated. There are tons and tons of content. There is tons and tons and tons of content on there. It's like 500 different things depending on the tier. So anyway, check that out. Patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. New stuff is posted there very frequently. So check that out. Next time, I don't know what we're going to be doing on the show, but we'll be back at some point. Tiny, that'll do it. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode. And now, enjoy this short clip from our Patreon exclusive RSS feed. For the full clip and more exclusive Patreon content, such as early access to episodes, TV, book, and movie reviews and reaction recordings, commentary tracks, and Patreon potpourri episodes, go to patreon.com/obsessiveviewer and become a patron at the minimum rate of $1 per month. Thank you and enjoy. In junior high, I was an immediate fan of a television program on Fox called Get Real. Wait, did you think I was going to say something else?
I thought you were going to say that TV show Drive.
Yes, Drive, that
Nathan
too.
Fillion,
Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah, Drive was good. But anyway, Get Real was before that. I was a charter member of the Get Real fan club on the I think IMDb message boards or something.
I remember that because I did not watch that show and I only knew about it because of you.
Yeah. It didn't save it.
This podcast was edited and produced by Matt Hurt and presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. You can find links to all of our shows at ObsessiveViewer.com/podcasts. For exclusive bonus content, including reviews, commentaries, and B-roll episodes, you can subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.